Just show you the abstract or glimpses of the issues on which you can interact with different sections and different people. We did a project for Mumbai Port Trust for environmental. Some of those issues on which you may need intense interaction with our institute. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will serve it. I mean, that's the illusion under which we are living, and that's why all the time we are physically trying to shift the responsibilities on other shoulders, as we discussed in the morning also. So I will present to you the general overview based on the relevant information available from various sources on port activities, environmental pollution and CRP. Ocean pollution is caused due to the following reason: oil pollution, marine debris, toxic materials, ocean dumping, mining, tanker spills, runoff from land and industrial waste. Now, some of those statistical analysis which have been done internationally, they point to the fact that land-based discharges are responsible for 44% discharges. Oil exploration and production only 1%. I doubt this figure that needs to be revised, but I'm just trying to invigorate your brain cells in that direction. Many of the statistical analysis which is given in the form of international references should be taken with a pinch of salt. We should not really, and all these have region specificity because this is a global scenario, but maybe in a regional scenario all those figures might change. For Bombay it will be different, for Nagpur it will be totally different. So that has to be, these are the issues which need deliberations. More than 90% of global trade is carried by sea. Annual sea trade is about 8 million tons. It is estimated that by 2060 it will grow to 23 billion tons. And unless adequate measures are taken, the associated carbon footprint and ecological footprint grow by 300%. So these are various other activities responsible for sea pollution. Cars 20.08%, fish and fuel. You will see they have the highest contribution, and fish the biggest contribution. So people from West Bengal, Kerala, Mumbai, if they do some remediation, that can be another form of bioremediation, that is change our dietary styles from non-vegetarian to vegetarian. It will result in good, significantly good environment management plan. That's why IPCC finally was compelled to come out with a solution that most of the pollution problems are actually because of our lifestyle patterns which are faulty in many ways. Potential impacts during port construction. While driving, deposition, we did that project for Mumbai port, so I am just trying to highlight those issues. While driving, deposition of rubber, grazing, sand compaction and other construction work in water cause resuspension of sediments and turbidity. So they increase the turbidity of water. Resuspension of sediments in water leads to an increase in the level of sediments in water and in the concentration of organic matter, finally leading to toxic or harmful levels. Now most of the environmental pollution problems are intricately interwoven. I mean, you cannot isolate. If we are suffering from some disease, we cannot say, say if my nose is blowing, only nose is not responsible for nose blowing. The cause of maybe somewhere else, cause maybe the stomach actually we are. This is what most of the time we are looking when we are writing overlooking when we are writing the environmental management plans. We see the effect is here, the cause also has to be somewhere there on. It's not there. Ozone travels some 500 kilometers in the air. So ozone may be generated or produced somewhere else. And European countries, they have found that they have through radioisotopes, they have tracked also. So actually if you find a problem like Mumbai problem we were discussing, the problem may be somewhere else, but the cause of the problem may be entirely at a different location. So that has to be looked into. Port operations, ballast discharges including bilge water, ballast water, oily waste, spoils, oils, lubricants, fuels and all that. Runoff from raw material storage, from bulk cargo handling, wind blown dust.
What is ballast water?
ballast water is water carried from different continents for different reasons, for balancing the ships, you know. Ship in the ocean it causes like this. So in order to balance, so those waters from different countries, okay, water contains many microorganisms also, various organisms. Sometimes maybe you have smaller fishes, you know. So when you carry it to different continent, the entire biodiversity of that continent gets changed. And finally, the base of the environmental pollution is predator-prey relationship. You know, that controls everything in the environment. Once this predator-prey relationship is disturbed, then you have unimaginable problems in the environment, as you say. It's like cancer. Today, environmental pollution is almost like cancer. Like doctors can only remediate cancer by some therapies which are finally not very successful. But if you ask the doctor to pinpoint the source of cancer, they are unable to do that. So from where that source is coming. So because of ballast water and some such activities, the whole microbial diversity of the ocean and the biological diversity ultimately is getting so altered. That's the responsible for most of the environmental degradation. The location of the port, changes in current patterns, littoral drifts due to wave diffraction, diffraction and reflection, changes in sedimentation, contamination, organic matters. These are routine contaminants. From land-based activities, estimates by the joint group of experts on the scientific aspects of marine environment, they suggested that land-based discharges such as sewage, industrial effluents and urban river runoff, together with atmospheric inputs from land industry sources, accounted in 1990 for some 77% of marine pollution generated from human activities. Now, while maritime transport was estimated to be responsible only for 12%. Now, these are the figures which will help us in quantifying the penalties to be imposed, how much percent contribution they have to the ultimate pollution, and you can also see the intricacies of that quantification because ये थोड़ा fan of the According to the report 2002 of UNEP's Global Program of Action for the Protection of Marine Environment from Land-Based Activities, 80% of the pollution in the world's oceans originate from the land-based. So different reports have different figures with the maritime sector, but almost they are of the same order. So you have land-based discharges, atmospheric contribution in the form of things like acid rain and all, maritime transportation, offshore production, dumping in the ocean. There are various different shipping operations, you can see that in the figure. The world tonnage which is carried through ships, the ship transportation, these figures give you the solid waste generation because many of you are interested in solid waste management and hazardous waste management. Cargo operations produce waste such as the remains of bulk cargo storage, rubbish from unpacking, floating garbage and other waste. Now generation of garbage from the offices and townships. Other disposal, dredging also causes a lot of problem. What to dredge, where to dredge, how much to dredge, and whether it will really solve the problem or create some additional problems also are the issues which have to be looked into. Now the incineration, actually we use sea as the dustbin. Any pollution caused anywhere will finally land up in the dustbin. So you look at our ecological balance and it will be interesting to note that earlier when industrialization did not happen, how that waste was getting recycled. We produce something for our food, we eat it and then we discharge it in terms of human waste and similarly for animals. Goes to the land, but what is bad for us, what is waste for us is actually the nutrient for the land. And that's a fertilizer. So that fertilizer again produces some food for us which we are eating. Many times we don't realize that we are really eating the recycled waste only. That was the natural recycling. But because of industrial interventions, all these recycling mechanisms got distorted. So initially the villagers used to discharge directly in the land. So they are directly recharging the groundwater. Okay. increasing the fertility of the soil, right? That is the way it used to be done. When we ruralization started converting into urbanization, so all that waste which was directly getting discharged in the land was being done in the urban sanitation system. And here you are preventing it to go to the land as much as possible, because through the sewerage network, it is either going to get discharged in the river or in the ocean. So the nutrients, the chemicals which were actually needed by the land is every day getting deprived of that amount of nutrient, and instead of that, water is getting the surplus of nutrients. So our urban sanitation system has totally distorted the ecological cycle. What was land's due is going to the water. So this air-water interaction has totally got changed. Now whether it is good or bad, it's debatable, and that depends on the kind of psychology we are carrying. But I'm just throwing open this topic to enter your minds and think whether in the name of urbanization, are we really developing, or we are creating problems for our own selves? So that's for you to think. I am not making a comment either on my own behalf or on the behalf of the institute. Okay. Typical water quality parameters: physical properties, chemical properties, physico-chemical and biochemical properties. Then what are the likely impacts on the water environment? Impact due to associated and ancillary port activities. Breakwaters and landfills may change current patterns and cause stagnation of water behind sea. Many of the biological activities in the ocean or river or anywhere for that matter are related to the hydrodynamics of the ecosystem. So if you change the wave patterns and things like that, the survival of many microorganisms become questionable. And once the microbial environment changes, because of the predator-prey interactions, the higher level trophic levels also get disturbed. And believe me, although it looks very small, the microbes are so important for running the environment. A small virus infection to us and a huge man or an elephant also become very vulnerable. So even the wave patterns, the ship moves in a particular direction. The whole fish migration habits will change. You are disturbing the route. When someone comes and flies a bus in that residential colony anywhere in Bombay or Nagpur, what will happen to various buildings under the bus? So that is how we are colliding with the environment every now and then, and we have to remember that it will be very difficult to sustain the after effects of all these onslaughts. Sewage disposal, you can see the way we are doing, and some pictorial patterns also. Some are in many parts of the globe, sewage flows into the ocean, seas and gulfs, untreated or undertreated. Mostly 80% of urban sewage discharge into the Mediterranean Sea. Sewage can lead to eutrophication and ultimately many times of microorganism-related human diseases. Contamination from various chemicals including pesticides. Pesticides, herbicides and many other chemicals are used in common consumer products. Some of the chemicals including radioactive waste find their way through runoff to the sea or ocean. Oceans have been very convenient dumping ground for waste generated on land. Bioaccumulation, then there are issues related with bioaccumulation, bioconcentration, biotransfer and biomagnification. Now, one of the most important contaminants, pollutants are the nets and plastics, which can be swallowed and caught in an animal's digestive system. There is an accumulation of various toxic materials also, for example, mercury, dioxin, PCBs, PHs and radioactive substances. Now, this travels through the entire food chain. In one species, you have a food wave chain in ecological system. So once a particular species is contaminated, the predator gets contaminated, the predator of predator also gets contaminated. So it travels through the entire network. Small species at the bottom of the food chain such as planktons in the ocean absorb the chemicals as they feed. The chemicals accumulate in these organisms and become much more concentrated in their bodies than in the surrounding water or soil. These organisms are eaten by small animals and the concentration rises again. These animals are in turn eaten by larger animals, and this leads to even further increased chemical load in them, sometimes even a million times higher than has been found. Polar bears which feed on seals can have contamination levels up to a billion times higher than their environment. Impact of oil pollution, which may be of special concern to you today. When there is an oil spill on water, spreading immediately takes place. The gaseous and liquid components evaporate. Some get dissolved in water and even oxidized. Some undergo bacterial changes and eventually sink to the bottom by gravitation action. So, entire three-dimensional ecosystem gets affected. Oil kills plants and animals in the estuarine zone. Oil settles on beaches and kills organisms that live there. It also settles on ocean floor and kills bottom-dwelling organisms such as crabs. Oil poisons algae and disrupts the major food chain. It also coats birds, impairing their flight or reducing the insulative property of their feeders. This makes them more vulnerable to food. Oil endangers fish hatcheries in coastal waters and contaminates the flesh of commercial valuable fish. One of the most significant impact is on mangroves. And mangroves, those who were talking about CPCB and all that, are the natural wastewater treatment plant. So their role in the ecology, actually many clever environmental engineers must have learned the mechanisms behind mangroves rectifying properties, and that is what is replicated in most of the wastewater treatment plant. Mangroves were the natural water purifiers, filters, purifiers through their bioremediation properties. And most, believe me, Chennai, Mumbai, such kind of cities are nothing but mangroves removed and concrete buildings made. That's what. So, what amount of huge environmental impact already Bombay has suffered. It was all mangroves only, and they have made connected various islands and this and that, mangroves gone. So that means so much of filtering capacity you have deprived Mumbai and Chennai of. And then we are unnecessarily fighting these NGTs. These are small cases, you know. Entire Mumbai system, the way it is developed, if you have the historical background, it has developed on mangroves. You have converted mangroves into concrete jungles. Imagine the amount of impact it would have already had. The kind of impacts which we are causing now may be very insignificant compared to what has already happened. So maybe the body is dead and we are just trying to fiddle with the eyes and eyebrows if we can make them alive. So that's the intensity of pollution which we have already caused. At least 4.2 million gallons of oil are already in the Gulf of Mexico, having unpredictable ecological dams. The seafood, fishing, shrimp and oyster industries in the Gulf are being destroyed. Even the industries are getting affected. So it's not only the common man who is getting affected. In the industry they are equally affected, and that's why our economy is in doldrums. Global food chain is continuously getting poisoned. It is pertinent to mention that seafood and tourism are two of the most important industries in the Gulf. So how much economical losses are also we are suffering. Oil exploration is going to be more risky and challenging venture. Oil prices are likely to keep on continuously rising as demand continues to increase while supply is reducing day by day. Now the moment you have price rise kind of a situation, that's a direct indicator of the perturbation, environmental perturbation and economic. Since the relationship between environment and ecology and economics is very simple. How money is manufactured. Money is set of rupees, set of dollars, or set of coins. Rupees need paper to be produced, dyes, ink, or dollar for that matter. All of them are forestry products. Paper comes from forest, dye comes from forest, ink comes from forest. Even coin. You can have metals only when you mine the forest. Okay, so basically what we are doing is we are converting the ecology into ecology into economy, and if on the paper you have put India's stamp and Mahatma Gandhi's photograph on a dollar, US stamp and Abraham Lincoln's photo, it becomes dollar. It is just an ordinary paper only. Ordinary paper is nothing but forest product. But what is the great difference between them? When you lock this money in the bank, you reduce so much of oxygen from the society. Because when they were in the nature as forests, they were continuously every day producing so much of oxygen. Now, once you have converted them into money and you have locked in the banks, then so much of oxygen you are depleting the environment of. We are talking of ozone layer depletion and all that, but actually no one is worried. Oxygen is depleting so strongly in the environment every day. And oxygen is depleting means our whole living mechanism is getting affected, because our cells were made in such a way that a particular proportion of oxygen should always be available in the atmosphere for our cells' activity. And those cells are getting affected. So much of, that's why most of the people these days are looking sicker than their grandfathers, including me. Actually, my grandfathers used to walk some 20-30 kilometers at a stretch. I have a problem with 5-10 kilometers also. I don't know what is the situation with all of you. And that's a direct indicator that our health is not the way it used to be earlier, because most of the time we are only indulged in converting ecology into economy, whereas the effort should be other way around. That's the whole problem. So our entire thinking, many a time people ask me the solutions to environmental pollution problems. They, of course, we write environmental management plan. They lie in the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change and all that. But two ministries which have the biggest potential for environmental management is Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Human Resources Development. Ministry of Defense, because most of the carcinogenic materials are needed there. Ministry of Defense. Incidentally, you have, as human beings, we have such a, actually Ministry of Defense is nothing but Ministry of War. So as human beings, we have such a strange tendency of waging, all the time being ready for waging a war. You don't have a love ministry, we don't want to love people. So we already have so much of problem in Hyderabad here recently, a father killing the daughter also. But, and so much money is invested. Defense Ministry, see, the development connotation should be such. The Human Development Index is dependent on 3 following factors: employment, education, and health. Okay. So the moment we say we are more developed states or countries, that means our educational levels are better than what it used to be earlier. The educational level becomes better, it should be synonymous with your tendencies to wage a war, right? If your educational level is better, that you should wage less wars. So the ministry, Defense Ministry's budget should come down. So if all the countries feel they are developed today that they were yesterday, they should sit down and find out tomorrow if they can reduce their budget by 5%. And believe me, if all the countries decide to reduce their defense budget by 5%, pollution levels will come down so much automatically, the best environmental management plan in the world. But believe me, it is not going to happen, because every country is so much suspicious of the other country. Our society these days is mainly running on suspicions, mistrust, misbelief, confusion, contradiction, contrast, all negative sentiments. And if you could transform these sentiments into some positive sentiment, no better environmental management plan than that. And that can be done only through Ministry of Human Resources and Development. And why it is not being done is because our primary education is totally gone. Who is a primary school teacher? very humble citizen of our country who is finding it difficult to make his ends meet, probably doesn't land up with a job, employment problems, then somewhere he is employed as a primary school teacher, and then he teaches our own children, and we are so proud of having that kind of a primary education. If you have not taught the right things to your children till age of 10, take this guarantee from me, the society would always remain in the same doldrums as it is today. Primary education is the foundation of our education system, our developmental paradigms. And if we have spoiled, we are talking of oil pollution, but if we have spoiled our primary education, that means we have spoiled the whole society in the globe, and no environmental remediation plan would be ever able to tackle it. The solution lies in human resources development ministry. You pay your primary teachers, school teachers, better than IIT graduates, and you will see that many IIT graduates will leave the kind of job they are doing, because we all know what kind of job we are doing. So many would leave and then will go for primary education. They will mingle with the children, instead of doing these training programs at our fag end of our life, they will do that training program at the beginning of the life. They will lay the foundations of environmental management, and then we will have the kind of environment we will feel proud of living. That's what is missing. When it comes to penalty imposition, and all, this diagram will help you. You can see how difficult it is to fix the cause and effect relationship. Pollution has the tendency to travel in such great complexities of the ecosystem, which connects aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, and the whole biosphere and atmosphere and lithosphere in a very complicated way. All these biogeochemical cycles, nitrogen cycle, sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle, carbon cycle, hydrological cycle, all are so intricately interwoven. It's like a bangle inside a bangle, inside a bangle, inside a bangle. And then how do you deal with that kind of an environmental system is a big challenge at this moment. The number of large spills, I think Santosh will, in a short while from now, deliberate on this. Incidence of spills world over, then impact on air environment, then we have those interconnectivity from air, how the pollution travels to water and land and all that. Then we have various kind of analysis done on air pollutants and their emissions, evaporations and oil explosions and all that. So these are issues on which you can dwell upon in our various lectures and classes. These are some economic damages which have already been quantified, for some of you were interested in finding out the penalties. In many countries it is being done for monetary emissions. Many a times those exact methodologies are not available, but we can try our own methodologies if we understand the underlying mechanism, and try a similar kind of an analysis for our country, which will help our NGTs and all that. The average waste production for a specific ship, bilge water, sewage, grey water, solid waste, this liter per week, you can see the enormous amount. See, the problem is there is no dearth of technologies. NEERI has the technologies, many other countries have the technologies, many institutions may have the technologies. While the technologies are able to solve the problems in few milligrams, you have already generated this amount of waste in the environment. So how technology will keep pace with the pollution generation is a moot point at this moment. Now, top 15 EU cruise ports based on expenditure. Expenditure is most of the time directly related to pollution. Pollution is directly proportional to consumption, which is directly proportional to expenditure. And the more you invest, and I already told you, money itself is the conversion of ecology. So that means more money you have to society, automatically you have already created somewhere enormous amount of pollution in someone else's backyard. School, power plant, oil power plant, gas power plant, and cruise ship. These are some relative contributions from different operations which may be of interest to you. Now, Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway fuel use in 2003 by type of vessels. Different types of vessels use different kinds of oils. CSE emission rates by different modes. Then you have summary of estimated environmental effects of freight transport by ship in the St. Lawrence Seaway and Great Lakes. Then sources of noise pollution, construction activities, transportation vehicles, work levels, carbon and emissions. These are the sources of noise pollution. Then there are socio-economic impacts. I think Harshvardhan and Dr. Suresh Kumar will cover these issues in more details during the EIA presentation. This is the state of affairs, which is I think 10 years old. These photographs are 10 or 15 years old. So whether they have improved or not, it is anybody's guess. And how the situation must be now, you can very well guess. Then some of the Indian situations, this Pandey Creek on the bottom left, director will deliver his talk tomorrow, but there was a time when, because he was the head of the Bombay National Laboratory before he became the director, and we had the occasion of traveling together to many of these sites in Mumbai, and we did this study. So we did some study for Mumbai region also on related to aspects related to climate and methane emissions. You know, this is the backyard of Mumbai, and you can see for showing to the foreigners, we have a different picture, but the actual picture is like this. And once you see this picture, no analysis needed, no monitoring is needed, no modeling is needed, no environment. You know what is the environmental management plan. So, and the kind of environmental management plans which are written in various EIA reports, you will know what. I did not. This was the time when we took the photograph, and I think director must be himself clicking this photo, so I am seeing it. So, once upon a time I was so young. Now we have to do integrated. We are just talking of risk assessment, this and that. That's a very parochial view of looking at the problem. There is something called integrated health risk assessment which has to be done. No EIA is complete if it does not talk of the integrated health risk assessment. Whether it is our EIA or someone else's EIA, unless until we do justice to all these components, EIA has got no meaning. And that's why EIA has not served a purpose. Because many times I say, any EIA, has it resulted in the reduction of contaminant level in any city in our country? Then that means we are traveling in the wrong direction. We must change the direction of EIA, and we must start doing EIA from a different perspective, like the way we are doing. And the last time which Harshvardhan was talking about the training program which he had organized, it was unanimously decided that environmental impact assessment should ideally and practically and should be based on integrated health risk assessment. We cannot escape this route if we have to really do a meaningful EIA. Otherwise, there is no point in doing that. So this is what I would tell. This entire predator-prey relationship which regulates air emissions, water emissions, soil emissions. And imagine whether you believe in God or not and what kind of God you believe, but certainly there is an external force which has created this ecological balancing between various species. Most of the species survive on the other species by eating them and all, but still many of the species are still surviving, notwithstanding the industrial revolution which we have encountered recently. So we did some methane emissions for various coastal zones, Paradip, Tuticorin, Visakhapatnam, Cochin, Mangalore, and these are some results of that. I started going in by okay. So these are some interactions. This is the methodology of how we did it, that synergistic impacts of environment and climate. Most of the time, you know, we think climate change is a different study and environmental pollution is a different study. It is like bodies you have to treat differently, mind you have to treat differently. The mind is away from that. Climate change is nothing but the mind of that body which is called environmental pollution. There is no process on the earth physical, chemical, biological, physicochemical, biochemical or biophysical, which is not a function of temperature and humidity. Even in electronics engineering, the electronic stability of various components, like the component which I am holding in my hand, is dependent on temperature and humidity. They are the foundations of the universe, Earth system, and regulators. So once we disturb them, little bit of temperature rise in your room, how uncomfortable you feel, you start adjusting through remote air conditioning. And the very fact that there is a boom in air conditioner marketing proves how important temperature is in our life. So full of important. We should not be, and all chemical kinetics, physical movements, physical processes, chemical processes, Charles' law, Boyle's law, first order reaction, second order reaction, all of them are dependent on temperature and humidity. So we have to deal with temperature and humidity very intricately. And there is no use all the time talking about maximum temperature is going to rise by this. Absolutely no meaning. It's the temperature gradient which is important. You take a hot water bath and just after that you take cold water. And then you see how many doctors you will have to contact. So these are the environmental impacts of, we have to worry about how temperature is changing in that local environment. In other words, it's known as heat island effect. In the same Bombay, if you measure temperature at different places, in the same room for that matter, the temperature in the bedroom is different, drawing room is different, in the kitchen is different. I really do not know how global analysis and averaging they are doing all over the globe to find out that temperature is going to rise by 2.5 degrees C or 4.5. And it is in any case meaningless. What is important is how the gradient is fluctuating. That's what is important. It's like our ECG graph. The size of your ECG wave is not important. If it starts fluctuating, you are at stake. So that kind of problem. Climate change in our country or globally for that matter, even by IPCC, has been viewed at a very parochial, narrow way. Ideally, it is a disturbance in terms of the interactions of various biogeochemical cycles, so hydrological cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur cycles, and all. Most important of all these is hydrological and carbon cycle. They directly relate because in any photosynthesis process, CO2 is taken and groundwater water is taken, and then this affects the hydrological cycle, and CO2, carbon cycle, both are intricately interwoven. So we cannot isolate this. We cannot isolate our body from mind and then start addressing. So there are various intricate issues. I think this is just to arouse your interest in IPCC methodology. We have also found many lacunae which we have rectified in our methodology. Then the emission factor, the default data, inappropriate default values given in IPCC, lack of emission factors, and disaggregated. Emission factor happens to be a very important issue. And unless until we have the standardized region-specific emission factors in terms of space and time, we are not going to do a meaningful analysis. Lack of availability of methane conversion factors, low reliability. These are the criticism of IPCC document. So even IPCC document suffers from these kind of issues. So then we evolved some other kind of a bypass mechanism methodology, and then we did this exercise for various coastal zones and we did it for that purpose. So these are some other issues which you may look into when you are free. I'm just trying to show you as a trailer of a movie so that this you can read at your leisure or interact with some of the individuals in our institute who can throw more deeper light on this. So this is the Mumbai port study which we did, and we did some carbon footprinting analysis for different ports, Geelong port, this Oslo port, then Rotterdam port, Koper port, and these are the comparisons. Different activities are important for different situations. Then we are attempting a cost benefit analysis of paper industry. I'm myself struggling, although we did an economics of wetlands in 2001 or 2. Myself, I published a paper in environmental monitoring and assessment. But looking at various kinds of uncertainties, I got myself discouraged and stopped that activity. I want to revamp it again. I thought probably someone else will do it in the country, but I don't think much has been done. So I'm trying to revamp that exercise once again and see how we can do cost-benefit analysis, which will help various industries, entities, or courts if required, the penalties required to be fixed. We should have ecosystem health report cards for different regions, and then that will facilitate environmental impact assessment, because all the time we do not need to collect the same kind of baseline information, and industries have to redundantly spend the same amount of money. And interestingly, you will find here, see, most of the time we are trying to increase our GDP, and this is an interesting graph. So, after a certain level, this human development index plateaus. And then in some countries like Nigeria and even comes down. So not necessarily that you will have an increased GDP, so human development will be better. Finally, they landed up proving that happiness index is highest in Tibet, not in USA. Now, who is responsible, I don't know. We don't know the Tibetan Prime Minister also, but we know US Prime Minister, right? But I don't know who is the Tibetan Prime Minister. Do you remember? So it's a strange phenomenon in life. But they say Tibetans are the happiest lot. Bhutanese. So, okay. Someone was bothered about the bioremediation, and that can be linked to phytoremediation. Of course, some studies have already been done, but we can attempt some similar studies. Volatilization, phytoextraction, phytodegradation, phytostabilization, phytotranspiration for the oils in the sea. I think they have done something. So how is the whole process of bioremediation, and these are the sources. They have already done it here at urban playground in Amsterdam. Experiments are being carried out into the use of plants to remediate the heavily contaminated water of an old shipyard. Amongst the plants being tried out are broadleaf petal, Typha latifolia, the foxglove Digitalis purpurea, and the black willow salix nigra. Botanists have really complicated that whole study of plants by giving these complicated names, but they are useful. Plants are the complete environmental treatment. The leaves will mitigate air pollution. The roots and mitigate water pollution and soil pollution also. So the rhizospheric interaction of the plants, in one go, how plant is really important. It may be more important than the dollars you have converted it. Continuously, perpetually, it is decontaminating land, decontaminating water and air pollutants. Through their stomata, they are able to absorb and mitigate air pollution problems. But if you deplant the hemisphere, then we will have the kind of problems we are having. And we have a strange connotation with respect to plants. What we say is, we have removed 100 plants in, say, Chandrapur, and we planted 1,000 plants in Nagpur. Is it the solution? Plants grow in a defined environment. Like human beings, they have a community perspective. They have a family, they have a society, all that has to grow together. Otherwise, they do not discharge the same ecological function which they are supposed to do. And when they are living beings, J.C. Bose spent his lifetime on proving that they were living beings. So can we have this kind of a management plan? I kill so many people in South Korea, but then we have produced children in North Korea. Can this be a solution? So what kind of solutions we are trying to find out in terms of afforestation, green belt development? We have to very carefully, the moment it comes to derooting the plants or cutting the plant, we have to be very careful because the perturbation which we are causing to the ecosystem may have a much larger ramification than we have earlier imagined it to be. So that is what is important. Living in what, this is how some of those attempts are being made, and this is our best friend called stomata, which takes part in not only soil purification, water purification and air purification. So it's an important organ in our entire earth system. You see on the left side we have relatively less contaminated side, the same species, and the right contamination, how air pollutants can cause this kind of damage, and sometimes soil pollution also. So stomata can be a very good bioindicator for static environmental pollution if you really do a careful analysis. Ultimately, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of instruments in the world, we have a lot of books in the world and all. Where we are lacking most is analysis. Analysis, interpretation and use. You think, is there any dearth of knowledge in any of these areas which I presented to you? So many books are available, so many papers are being produced, so many technologies are being developed all over, if not in India, all over the world. But still, we are struggling with the same problems with which we are struggling 30 years ago. My tenure in this institute is already 31 years. Same problems are still there before us. Because we are not able to analyze and interpret the information which is available to us. So that analysis and interpretation of data is most important. Already we have enormous amount of data on which those penalty can be improved. But what we do not have is the time to sit down. Some people have the analytical ability, but they do not have the time to sit down and analyze the data. And believe me, time is the most important economic item in our hand. We have anything on the earth, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, so many aircrafts, multi-dimensional and multi-story buildings and all that. But if we do not have time, to even know what we have. And we are the most impoverished man if we do not have time, despite having everything else. Most of the people who have a lot of affluence will find probably, and ultimately they will come with the same kind of murmuring like an old man in any village. Oh, this was important, now I realize. I think some such statements even people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they also made. So ultimately everyone will finally make the same statements. I got disgruntled with life, despite this, building such a large structure, doing so much in the terms of industrial revolution and all. Ultimately what we are just a combination of electrons, protons and neutrons, believe me. And then we are creating so many problems every now and then for our own selves or for others also. I tell people the best bioremediation is every citizen of this country decides that I am selfish of the highest order. I do not worry about the family, I do not worry about the society, I do not worry about the country and the universe at large. But I do worry about myself, and I will make it a very responsible citizen of my own self. And I will manage my own affairs. I don't need anyone's help in this. I'm very simple. Even this selfish step, if we are ready to take, our society will be very great. Because every human being is very responsible, very good. Are we doing this? That's what we are precisely not doing. Because the first slide, second slide in the beginning which I showed you, for everything else, someone else is responsible. The government should do it, the industry should do it, the teacher should do it, my boss should do it, the system should permit it, the rules should. What is that? I am myself doing, I'm never questioned. It is so simple as that. Let us not worry about anyone else on the earth. Worry about your own self. And see that the next step which you are taking in your life, is that environment friendly or not? And if you can really manage environment, believe me, you have managed everything else. Because the environment is connecting you to the rest of the society and the world. But that is what precisely we are not doing. The brothers will be fighting with each other, they will not be able to solve the problem, so they will call an advocate, okay, who will need a judge, and then that entire full cycle goes. That's how we have complicated the societal affairs. The best management is self-management. If we have managed ourselves and environmental management, most of the Indian Institute of Managements actually, if they can be converted into Indian Institute of Environmental Management, that is a solution for environmental pollution problems. Some of the contributions we have made. I used to be CSIR's coordinator for climate change program, and most of the laboratories, we come under the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. It has got 38 laboratories. EIA happens to be one such laboratory, or unique laboratory looking at the environmental affairs. So our mandate is to help the government, help the industry also in terms of environmental management plan and society at large. There are some issues related with smart cities and all that, and there are some issues, coastal regulation, zone notification, evaluation. The notification is several positive and negative features which are being created once. Then classification of CRZ, island protection zone, rules and exceptions. I think various other speakers will cover and interact with you on these issues. Then we have 2011 notification. International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, that is MARPOL, and adoption of that convention in various years, the various issues on which we can interact with our colleagues. Then we have Annexure 1, the convention includes regulations aimed at preventing and minimizing pollution from ships, both accidental pollution and that from routine operations, and currently includes 6 technical annexes. Special areas with strict controls on operational discharges are included in most annexes. Annexure 2, regulations for the control of pollution by noxious liquid substances in bulk. 3, prevention of pollution by harmful substances carried by sea in packaged form. 4, prevention of pollution by sewage from ships. 5, prevention of pollution by garbage from ships. 6, prevention of air pollution from ships. MARPOL Convention remains the most important international treaty instrument covering the prevention of pollution by ships. Then, International Maritime Organization's environmental framework. Posters started doing that. Other potential impacts. IMO is also tackling various issues connected with the protection and preservation of marine biodiversity, such as transfer of invasive species. So, with ballast waters also this problem is and transfer of invasive species is there. Effects of underwater noise from ships on living sea creatures. Then we are on the ship which is in the search of sustainable development. So like me, there are other people also who are thinking in the universe, so the universe is surviving. It has been left to our generation to discover that you can move heaven and earth to save 5 minutes and then not have the faintest idea what to do with them when you have saved them. Then we can go to canteen. To get all there is out of living, we must employ our time wisely, never being in too much of a hurry to stop and sip life, but never losing our sense of the enormous value of it. No matter how many goals you have achieved, you must set your sights on a higher one. And higher doesn't mean actually it should be on the 6th floor. Higher has got a different meaning. It should be more in terms of harmonicity of, see, life is like, should be treated like a musical concert. Most of the time we are obsessed with weight, biomass, numbers, size and this and that. My tummy was little smaller when I was young, but I think it was better when it was smaller. If it goes on increasing, is it an indicator of good health? increases as this Pandey's tummy meets with Upadhyay's tummy. That's not the indicator of development. GDP growth, is it an indicator of development? Already international statistical analysis are there. And in terms of human health and happiness, if it is not contributing, why are we so much obsessed with that? And for all you know, for God's sake, how GDP is calculated, I think 99% of Indian population would not know also. But still we believe that calculation, and then we are obsessed with that calculation. It's not the size, it's not the amount, it is not the number which makes the difference. Life should be led like a musical concert. In this life there is a tabla wadak, there is a sitarist, there is a guitarist, there is a vocalist, and all of them should combine in such a fashion which makes it music. So someone notices, like maybe a scientist like me says, the tabla wadak does 2 times and the music is melodious by 4 times. So if he, during the same interval of time, if he presses the table 4 times, so melody will increase to 8 times. It's not a linear proportionality which regulates human affairs. You must remember that when a small child, 8th standard child, they just learned arithmetic. Then he sees his father puts 1 glass of water in a plant. After a week, the plant grows by 1 centimeter. So 1 glass of water for a week leads to 1 centimeter growth in the plant. So he just learned arithmetic. He said, if I put 10 glasses, so 10 centimeter growth will be there. If I put 100 glasses, suddenly the plant will become a big tree. He puts 100 glasses and the plant dies. Mostly in terms of planning, this is the approach we are following. And that's where we are failing despite having Nobel Prize winners every year in economics. I'm blaming not only Indians. Nobel Prize is won by many internationally great personalities also. And still global economics is important. What use it is to institute a Nobel Prize to award our people if it is not going to serve the economic constraints and problems of the society. So it's a very strange kind of society we are living in. Everyone knows that cycling is best for a body. How many of us would like to follow that example? We know the solutions. We don't want to follow the solutions. Who will save us? Always Salve and Harshvardhan will not be able to, because they are dealing with only guest house matters. Everywhere on the earth they will not help us. And Santosh will also not help with his risk assessment abilities. We have to help ourselves. So only knowing the solution is not going to help us. There are so many other slides, but I have raised some issues which will be, and when we talk of sustainable development, remember the sustainable development for a smaller fish is different, a larger fish is different, for a bull and cow is different, for human beings is different, for America it is different, for Indians it is different, and unless until we recognize these differences, there is no point in talking about sustainable development. Because for that, we have to first work on sustainable thinking, which will evolve a standard methodology for working in the direction of sustainable development. You know, many times we feel unnecessarily we have complicated the human affairs. When in engineering we do cost-benefit analysis, we are interested now also. So benefit of the human, which is the greatest benefit of human society? Happiness. Okay. So with the minimum investment, if you get the maximum amount of happiness, that should be the ultimate goal of sustainable development or human affairs, right? But is it really happiness? The person who gets a degree from IIT, is he really happiest all the time? Is happier than other people? A person who is from IIM, I think very few of them are in our ministries anywhere, right? So are they able to manage human affairs? No. So these conventional indicators are not going to help us, because we have foolishly set our standards in the sky. It's one thing to talk of those typical management jargons, sky is the limit and all. In my opinion, it's all foolishness. Even a buffalo is happier than us. You know? Minimum investment. In the muck of that कीचड़ we call it, कीचड़ के भीतर भैंस वो आप तैरते हुए देखिए, and you think all that knowledge and all that position which we have acquired in the English, the buffalo is happier than us. And we have set such strange standards for us. Only when I reach the sky in this direction and catch the moon, which we are never going to catch, then I will be able to smile. And if you have set the standards for smiling, will you ever be happy? We are foolish people. We can set our own, look at the child's standard, very small standards. He is able to hit his papa, he is very happy. So small standard, just hit one box and you are happy. We have to set, if you are not happy, just set your standards, fine tune your standards like that, and happiness will come knocking at your door, believe me. We have the habit of driving the happiness away all the time because of our temperament, because of our arrogance, because of our foolish notion, because of our conventional teaching, which has drowned us the way that ship was going to get drowned in the earlier slaves. So much for today. With these few words, I will stop here, and I would like to interact with you because all this while I was talking so much. Actually, Harshvardhan rightly pointed out, yesterday we were lecture in that is supposed to be DST inspire, I have to inspire the youngsters in the crowd. So probably the same effect is still continuing. I had only sleep full night yesterday, and then the extension of that activity. So with these words, I am happy that you are here. Once again, I welcome you on behalf of our director, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, the entire institute, and my own behalf, on behalf of Dr. Harshvardhan, Santosh, and Salve. And I think as the morning interaction shows, we are really going to be able to, best way to help ourselves is to help each other. Yeah.
So, can you tell something about the assimilative capacity of CE and something about
See, the story of assimilative capacity is like this. It's a story attached to this. It was, I think, 1989. Professor Khanna was the director of this institute. And there was the first conference sponsored by Ministry of Environment and Forests. At the first conference on sustainable development in India, sponsored by Ministry of Environment and Forest, organized at Dehradun. Professor Khanna as the director was invited. Somehow, whether it was not possible for him to go, or he thought I will make a worthy presentation there, so he delegated me for that Sustainable Development Conference, the huge conference. I was that time scientist B in this institute, to be surprised. Okay. One of the youngest scientists, though I was slightly scared. I had an initial discussion with Professor Khanna also, whether I should go or not, because I came fresh from IIT. IIT, these kind of delegations are not there. When the professor is invited, he himself goes only. He doesn't delegate associate professor or assistant professor. He is from academic institutions to certify on statement. So I was finding it very difficult to digest the fact why Professor Khanna should send me, and I was slightly nervous also why I should go. So I went to him, sir, actually this invitation is for you. He said, yeah, it's for me, but I am delegating, you should go. I said, but I am feeling nervous. Said, no, you are feeling nervous, but I am confident you will make a good presentation. You go. So I attended. Now, stalwarts, maybe some of them you might not have seen, the Varghese Indian Express editor, Anil Agrawal was the environmental stalwart of that. Then Dr. Modgal, advisor from Ministry of Environment and Forest. So all such group was there, and I was feeling in that great group, just like an Abhimanyu in that Chakra. So I don't know. In the first 2 days, I just went on this. They were all great people. They were all good orators, you know. So I really do not know how to interrupt them and make my point before them. And I thought maybe this is just an experience. I will go and brief Professor Khanna. So it was second or third day. Someone noticed me. So I think probably Anil Agrawal. So he said, this young man is from the beginning just keeping quiet in the corner. We are not allowing him to speak. Let us give him a chance to speak. We had those days from the same Ministry of Environment and Forest. The first project which I started in this institute was on district planning model based on ecological and economic sustainability in this same country. Now we are again reviving that topic based on ecological and economic sustainability to make a district planning model. And the idea was to change GDP into GEP called gross ecological product. And for that we had prepared a document as a project proposal, including all the concepts of assimilative capacity, carrying capacity, and how they are balancing ecology and economy, and submitted it to the Ministry of Environment and Forest. And our demand was 10 lakh rupees for that project. I exactly remember those figures because I was so intensely involved. All these things were new for me. You know, I graduated from IIT Kharagpur and my PhD topic was on semiconductor physics. That's why I can integrate electronics, environment, and spirituality. So many of these things were new for me, but I was energized and enthusiastic to learn all those things. And Professor, since director of the institute is so confident of your ability, such a nice situation, so I was happy to do it because he was a very dictatorial, like even CPCB chairman who used to almost work under him. I will tell you, Dr. Neelay Chaudhary was the CPCB chairman. So we had written that proposal. So during that presentation, maybe it was something similar, without slides of course, it was shorter, but almost similar. People got highly. I'm not praising myself. You have raised the issue of similarity capacity, so I'm compelled to do that. So they got highly impressed. So in the evening, the advisor of Ministry of Environment and Forest, Dr. Mudgal, said, he still doesn't know from where I come. So, yeah, man, you really made a marvelous presentation. Which institute do you belong? Said NEERI. Oh, you are from NEERI, come. It was in the evening. I'm giving you some hard facts. So he took me to his room. He said, yes, but this is my card, and if I can be of any help to you, remember me. He said, sir, you can be immediately of help to me. He said, how? I have submitted the project proposal titled so and so in the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So if you can help me in getting that project from your ministry, I will be grateful to you. The immediate question he asked, what is the budgetary provisions there? I said, 10 lakhs rupees. I said, see, Pandey, for things like district planning and all, and the kind of issues which we are talking about, like assimilative capacity and carrying capacity, unless until we increase our study dimensions, and as a result, the financial projections, ministry may not get much interested and attracted. Who is your director? He said, my director is Professor Khanna. So why don't you talk to your director and then come back to me if you are ready to prepare a larger dimension project with larger financial connotation. I said, okay, I used to, even now I am scared of great finances. I think financial thing is somehow taking us in the wrong direction. So I thought I would just come back and tell the director what is to be needed, because my job was to do the duty which director had assigned. Very simple. I am like that way, like Arjun. If you tell Dronacharya tells me, you shoot into the bird's eye, I will just do that and forget the rest. Bird also. That's why carry the burden of the bird. So I came back and Professor Khanna asked me, so what happened? I said, sir, something very interesting happened, and I told him the story. Well, this card I got from one advisor from the ministry, and he told me that if your director agrees, then you can larger project you can submit it to us, and that stands the higher chances of getting funded. Professor Khanna was a great academician, at the same time was a great implementer. So he didn't even think for a while, he just took the card and rang the number himself. So he said, Dr. Mudgal, I am Khanna here from this side, and that my young colleague Dr. Pandey is sitting before me. And he tells me all this. So what is your version? Dr. Mudgal said, yes, we are ready to fund immediately, but we are waiting for the proposal, because this is there in the ministry's mind. So we submitted 2 projects worth those days, I think we are talking about 89, 90, worth 3 crores. One was 3.5 crores, the other was 2.5 crores, something like that. In total, 7 crores project. One was for Doon Valley carrying capacity project, the other one was for national capital project. These are the starting point of carrying capacity projects in India. So then Professor Khanna said, now from tomorrow, you get on the job. I was too scared, you know, I have no subordinates also, such huge products. Those days, even lakhs would be difficult to digest, the crore projects. So I said, sir, so how I will be able to handle it? And he was such a fantastic diagnostician. In no time, he understood my problems without my explaining also. He said, okay, you do the academic, you lay the academic foundations of that. I will ask different senior people to manage the project. So some people were made the project. That's the story of carrying capacity. The assimilative capacity, that presentation which I had made was first presentation for the terrestrial ecosystem, was based on the stomatal analysis which I presented. We did the whole biodiversity assessments, and we studied the stomata of different species present in different ecosystems. Like we divided them into various circular grids and patterns and those zones, and then we made the one which was least polluted was the control site, and then with respect to that where the other polluted sites stood. But we could do it for terrestrial ecosystem. Similar thing for aquatic ecosystem was difficult to do. And then, as you know, this institute started getting flooded with projects after that. So somehow when the dam gets broken, the water overflows, and we got so many EIA projects and all that. So we lost our carrying capacity focus. That's the story of carrying capacity and assimilative capacity. And as a result, even now, the situation in terms of quantifying assimilative capacity and carrying capacity is not much better than what it was at that moment, because the institutional focus only drifted into a different direction. That's that. If you people want, again it should be revived, because without doing that, without doing regional assimilative capacity, there is no point in doing any environmental impact assessment. And for that, environmental impact assessment should be based not on those kind of data which are collected mindlessly. See, ecosystem health analysis is a discipline, which is my discipline. It's like human health analysis. Okay, suppose I suffer from chest pain, okay, and I go to a doctor. Doctor doesn't start counting hairs on my body. Chest pain, he already has some background information. It may be because of the following reasons: gastric, heart problem, this and that. So he goes to specific diagnostic tools, ECG, specified. You don't have to count whether I have 5 fingers or 1 thumb, or thumb is aching, or this is yellow, or nail is like this. At the moment, the environmental impact analysis is like that. Any industry, any problem, anywhere, we have to collect this baseline information. First of all, that secondary information has to be studied in depth to find out whether the same parameters which were for a different industry in a different region are relevant here or not. So the environmental impact of whole activities will not be same as oil refinery, right? But this kind of distinction has not been understood by great stalwarts of environmental impact assessment in this country, I will tell you. That's why our country is in the doldrums. But even the greatest stalwarts of EIA have overlooked this fact. The story is like 7 blind men and an elephant. Have you heard that story? For those who have not heard, there is an elephant and 7 blind men are asked to define blind men. So they are asked to define what is an elephant. So blind men, people, they don't see. So someone catches the trunk, someone catches the tail, someone catches the leg, someone catches some other portion of the elephant. So finally when they are asked, they will describe according to what they have touched. That's the state of affairs with the environmental impact assessment experts in our country. Most of us are behaving like this. Those days they were 7. God knows how many. To open our eyes and revolutionize the whole environmental impact assessment procedure in this country if we really want to save the environment. If we just want to go on doing the business as usual scenario, then God save us. But if we really are interested, the entire environmental impact assessment procedure has to be fundamentally revolutionized. And if it is not, then the problem is like this. You have that bucket full of clean water and someone drops just 1 spoonful of contaminated water. Even that bucket full of clean water becomes contaminated. Similar is the situation. So if you are surrounded with even 1-2 such people who can be classified under that blind men kind of people in the 7 blind men and elephant kind of a story, they will contaminate the whole environmental management. And that's what is precisely happening. We need fewer people, but sensible people who are more responsible. So that we can link. So if we destroy the environment, it is not only going to affect my neighbor, it's going to affect me also finally. If Bombay air pollution is bad, it is bad for the slum dwellers also, or for the richest people living in Bombay also. Because at least once they have to open their doors and come out in the open. And they will be exposed to the same carcinogenic compounds which are available in the atmosphere so abundantly. I do not know. They have all that money and they do not have the sense to perceive it. It still looks a puzzle to me. I think I really do not know what to say. If the money cannot purchase wisdom, that's the most important futility of money. And then look at the affairs in which those many people are indulging, you will find out many more futilities like the one I am trying to talk about. So this is the state of affairs, and this is the way, if you are interested, you can interact with me, I can dwell upon it in later details. We are really working at this moment why Tushar and Chitra are looking slightly serious these days, or I have given them a very complicated exercise related to predator-prey mechanisms, but let me see how much dent they are able to practice. A lot of ideas I have, unfortunately, I do not have. Many people who are mentalists in synchronization with those ideas, but even few individuals, if they are interesting and I find potential in them, I encourage them to work in that direction. That's the way, this is my art of living. Already there is art of living. I'm going to retire after 2 years and I will open a center called Heart of Living, where I will teach this kind of thing. If any of you are wanting to join, you are free to join me. Many of my youngsters have promised they will come with me, so that's the foundation. Okay, with this I will like to thank you all. Thank you for this patient hearing, and I will be happy if it helps you in focusing your different directions and dimensions. Thank you.